all dressed in baggy, faded blue and white hooped rugby shirts. And picture an 80-year-old former accountant in a flat cap, with trousers tucked into his socks, tottering slowly towards them, carrying a bucket of cold water and a sponge in one hand, and a bag of orange segments in the other. Chapter 1. Little Legs. Oxford psychology professor, the late Michael Argyle, said that the happiest people in the world were those who were either active members of a religious group or those who took part in team sports. So it was at the age of 35, as a miserable atheist, I took up playing rugby. I hadn't played any rugby since I was about 13 at school in Wimbledon. Even then, I hadn't really played very much at all. For several years, I convinced the rowing teachers that I was playing rugby, whilst convincing the rugby teachers that I was doing rowing. Meanwhile, I went home and did very little indeed. If you are no use at sport as a child, you'll be cruelly mocked and ridiculed. Those who are not particularly well coordinated and have thin skins will eventually give up and go away to find some other activity, like shoplifting or solvent abuse. However, when you take up a team sport like rugby as an adult, even if you have absolutely no idea what you're doing, no one gives you a hard time. People are just pathetically grateful that you have turned up. They are nice to you because you have made up the numbers so they can have a proper game. If you add that to a willingness to play in the front row, they can have contested scrums and you will have made some friends for life. Rugby seemed to be a great place to deal with my own personal midlife crisis. I was in a relatively senior job in a large Chamber of Commerce and government-funded business support operation. Having spent the earlier part of my career in a more metrosexual media and political environment, I was now surrounded by some very blokey blokes. They were all either go-getting entrepreneurial types or failed businessmen who had become business advisors. Most seemed to spend their days talking about sport and cars. If I was going to get on with the crowd, as the saying goes, I needed to man up. I had also recently acquired contact lenses after a lifetime in glasses, in a bout of midlife vanity. It could have been worse. Others of my generation were bleaching their hair, getting inappropriate piercings, and wearing leather trousers. Contact lenses paved the way to contact sports. So, when I found my way to Warlingham Rugby Club, I was delighted to discover a home for a group of men all enjoying their own particular mid, early, or later life crisis, and having a good time into the bargain. Here, by a Surrey playing field in the late summer, I found my way to the changing rooms and pulled on my newly purchased boots. Warlingham is like many rugby clubs in the UK. There is a nice enough clubhouse with a huge function room, a cosy bar, and some basic bare brick changing rooms. It prides itself on being one of the few clubs with a huge traditional communal bath. It has 5 pitches and shares the premises with a netball team and a cricket club. Every now and again, someone will apply for some lottery money, send out an appeal or send off an insurance claim, and a few improvements or repairs will be done by someone's mate. There is a floodlit training pitch, and on a Tuesday and Thursday evening throughout the autumn, winter and spring, men of various shapes and sizes turn up for training. It's only when you look at the car park on a training night that you realise the wide range of people that get involved. One of the joys of amateur club rugby is the diversity of the sorts of people who play, from city boys who turn up in suits and smart cars, to builders and landscape gardeners who turn up in battered Ford Transit vans. Once everyone is changed and on the pitch, your background is almost irrelevant. Traditional British social divisions are replaced by a far more sinister and uncrossable barrier, rugby's very own apartheid, the distinction between forwards and backs. That was the very first tricky decision I had to make at my first training session. After a bit of running around to warm up, we were told to divide up into forwards and backs. Which was I? I had absolutely no idea and no time to decide. As far as I could tell, from watching the old international on the TV, the forwards seemed to have to do a lot of fairly technical stuff. Scrums, lineouts, rucks, mauls, ear biting, eye gouging, etc. These were dark arts of which I knew nothing. The backs seemed to have a fairly straightforward job of standing in a line, throwing the ball to each other, and running a bit. How hard could that be? I decided to be a back. The coach for that evening was a nice bloke called Neil Farmer, a ponytailed schoolteacher. Pottery, I guessed. Tall and thin, with a good line in sarcasm. He took one look at me as I jogged off to